Welcome to the Life is an Escape Room podcast, where learning about yourself is an adventure. Here's your hosts, the Eanes escapeletes, Chris and Jeff.
Hello, fellow escapeletes. What do an Egyptian tomb, the zombie cure, a prison break, a bank heist, a hunt for a treasure on the high seas have in common? Well, they're all amazing escape room experiences.
And what is an escape room, you might ask? Well, at its heart, an escape room is a game. It's a game based on a theme with several challenges, and it's based around a theme. So escape from a prison or complete some sort of challenge.
So we found ourselves addicted to escape rooms. Starting in 2016, our daughter introduced them to us. And we found by doing a lot of them, we learned a lot about ourselves, as well as having an opportunity to develop ourselves in the areas that we were found in lacking. In particular, we found perception a huge area, how we viewed things, how our biases on our brain get in the way of us viewing things. Our emotional intelligence, how well we were able to control our emotions, be aware of them in the first place, right? And then be aware of others' emotions and best interact with them. And then how we communicate with others in a way that reaffirms the relationship and also gets stuff productively done. And from that, we also decided on the term escapeletes. So if you're curious on why we start out with, hey, escapeletes are escape room athletes. So those that are continually learning and honing themselves through the fun of escape rooms. Let's start actually talking about perception first. So Jeff, can you share a story where maybe either our perception got, tripped us up, or we had to switch our perception, something about perception, what we've learned?
Well, it's amazing all of the different experiences we've had relative to perception. Both the way we think we're talking to each other and the way we really are. And it's very interesting. We've had several examples where some of the venues actually record you and do after action reviews, and you actually see yourself. But as we talk about the idea of perception, it's very interesting how your perception controls your behavior. It controls your sense of anxiety. So one of the examples I like to talk about is an example we had in an Egyptian tomb. This is one with our brother, our daughter, and us were in there together. And it was very interesting watching as we're moving around, we've divided, we're teaming up in some examples and we're doing it on our own in others. But I remember coming in to check on you and Josh, and it was funny because you were very intensely focused on a puzzle. And I remember just glancing up, and I noticed that the roof was closing in, and it was closing in fairly fast. So, I mean, you're actually, if you had looked up, I think it would have been extremely distracting. It would have had some trouble.
Idea.
And I mean, it really was very, well, definitely thrilling in a way, but also entertaining to realize that because you didn't notice a problem or it wasn't in your perception, it was no longer a problem. And sometimes we create these problems just because of the way we see them. And in this case, it wasn't a problem because you didn't notice it. But it does bring up the idea of, well, if it's, how can we control our behaviors when we're looking at things? And if it's not affecting us in the moment, we can actually overcome that either by ignoring it, compensating, or just staying focused on what you want to stay focused on.
Absolutely. Well, and how our thoughts can create our emotions. If we had looked up and started freaking out instead of, oh, that's interesting, and then gone back down and focused, right? It could have totally thrown us off. There's so many stories of perception. But speaking of moving into the realm of emotions and how our thoughts create our emotions, for emotional intelligence, we've had so many experiences where emotions play a role, right, in the escape room environment. From the looking up and you see 5 minutes left, and you look
Right.
around and you perceive having about 20 more puzzles. Of course, it's blown up in our mind, right? We have a
Right.
decision point. Do I freak out or do I focus and try to go and push through? At first, we freaked out, the first maybe couple hundred, and then we learned, let's focus and keep through. But there are so many opportunities that we've had, like getting locked in coffins or small spaces, or it's hot, we're hungry, opportunities to
Yeah.
work on our emotions. But one in particular really exemplifies emotional intelligence for me. And that's when we were on an actual boat. It was a very unique opportunity. We were doing an escape room on a boat. The boat was an escape room. So it's not like it was a small part of like a huge cruise ship. It was an escape room. And we got in there. We worked our way through several rooms in the boat, going deeper. There's one point where we had to crawl through this small duct. And then we got in this room, and we were actually on top of the furniture because that's how we got into the room for some reason. And then you went over and started flipping little switches because you're the switch guy. We each have our own little area, right? You're the switch guy.
And you pressed red buttons. I
love to press
switches.
buttons.
Yes.
The bigger, the redder, the better. So anyway, you started doing the switches, and then first an alarm went off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a piercing alarm, and then water started coming in. And we were at this point we were standing on a grate on the floor, and then you're like, no worries, I'll just close what are they, portholes?
The portholes, right.
I'll just go close the portholes. And you do that, and the water starts coming over, like, what is it, the wall?
The bulkhead,
yeah, the bulkhead. I was like, oh crap. And then I look down, I'm like, oh, it's not going to go above the grate. And then what happens the minute I say that?
Almost immediately it started getting onto our shoes. Yep.
So I go, okay. So we had to climb up onto the counters. And at this point, it wasn't the water that was bothering me. It was the piercing alarm because, I'm very hearing sensitive.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity to work on my emotions because I'm about to have a moment here. So thankfully, teamwork. You're calm, cool, and collected. The alarm doesn't seem to be bothering you as much. Well, your military time, it's a little more trouble
and mostly
hearing.
deaf, yeah, it's like...
So anyway, you're focused on the switches, and that allows me to go back a couple of rooms and start pacing to work through that emotion. But we do end up getting out. We don't want to share too many examples. We did have to wade through about 3 feet of water to get out.
Pretty close. Yeah. Up to our knees. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't that tall, huh? So we did get out, and that was a lesson learned that we continually get to practice in escape rooms on, okay, I'm getting triggered. Let me find ways to self-soothe instead of let this turn into a full-blown like panic attack or whatever, right? So that's been a huge learning for me in emotional intelligence.
Oh, and just the idea of communicating, the perception of what you think something is and the way people hear you. I mean, we always talk about the idea of a message. A message is both the what you say, how it's communicated, and how it's received. And it's very important to remember that. But one of the ones that we actually learned a lot from, we were in an escape room, and we're trying to find a secret cult, I think is what it was. And we had gone into the sewers and
thankfully they weren't smelly.
Yeah, but we did, but half of our team had to crawl by a body, I think. So they crawled into this area, and as soon as they crawled in, the door had locked. So they were sort of trapped on one side. I was on one side. They were on the other. You were on the other.
Yes.
And I remember I had sort of the instructions to rewire the door so we could open it, and you had the wires. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were having the hardest time communicating to each other because I kept saying blue. And I didn't realize there was a navy blue and like a sky blue. And just something as easy as just, well, that means blue to me, and blue is blue. But, it's the idea of, well, how do you see blue? Do you, just the words. So it's very interesting. We learned a lot from that, just orange and yellow. Is something lighter? Is it darker?
Which we like to argue over. Is it really orange? No, it is orange.
Is
no,
a
I'm
school
kidding.
bus yellow or is a school bus orange?
Yellow.
I think I'm pretty sure it's, But yeah, that was a very interesting thing. It's amazing as you go through these things in an escape room and you notice, we're just saying little things like that, and it's becoming like a huge communication problem. But when you pull it back, it's also, you get home at the end of the day and you say, how was your day? Fine. Well, was fine in a way that it really was fine? Or, just the way you say it and the way a person receives it, you can just learn so much when you're deliberate in what you're saying and being aware of how people receive it.
Yeah.
So we learned a lot from that.
Absolutely. Well, which is what we've taken into our other escape rooms as well as life, right? So one thing we, especially from that story we learned was something that we take for granted as how we see the world is the way everyone else sees it. And that's not necessarily the case. So I was so proud of us. Maybe it was 6 months ago, I can't remember, who knows what trip we were on. We're at 800 rooms now. Yay.
We just passed 800.
At the time of this recording. Next time, by the time you're listening to this, it could be 1,000 rooms. Who knows? Anyway. But we were in a completely dark room. And one of us was near a puzzle and the other one was feeling around, and we felt shapes in this closet and we were supposed to count them, right, and put on a dial like the number, I think it was the number of shapes or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But before we started the puzzle, we both went to the dial and each felt the shapes and said what it was to us. And we were mostly aligned, but there was a couple of them that we had to go, okay, this to you is this to me is that. Since you're the one choosing them, I'll use your words.
Right.
So we level set with those words. And I think it's important to do that in life. Like, I mean, at home, right? Do the dishes soon. Well, what does soon mean to you versus what does it mean to me? At work, get this project done soon. Okay, what does that mean? Is that 20 minutes or is that in the next 30 days?
Couple of days.
Yeah, right. So that means different things to different folks. So before we work on things with others or even have conversations, level set on what means. And if we start getting into some sort of argument, let's step back and say, okay, well, how do you define this? Well, how are you defining this? Oh, there's where the misunderstanding is, right? Before we go down this whole rabbit hole of arguing.
Well, and it's amazing when you talk about the idea of communication. Even when we say communicating is giving and receiving information, the whole idea of perception takes on a huge first order effect on communication. Unless you have level set or you understand how others perceive something, it's almost foundational to communication. You have to really put yourself in other people's shoes, empathize with them, understand their language, their terminology.
Absolutely.
But these are things that you just can learn so much from. And it really is a foundational piece of communication, but perception is just so important.
Huge, right? And the intertwining of all of that perception, being aware of our emotions and being able to manage them, and then using that to effectively communicate with others. Oh, I love this stuff.
Oh, yes. Well, and it's amazing how much we've both done so many things through our lives, our careers, just on our personal side, our professional side. And it's amazing, at least for me, it's amazing how much I feel I've grown through I mean, we've done quite a lot of escape rooms, but it seems like every time we do one, we're learning something different. And it's such a great environment to practice. It's safe. So it's not like you're in the middle of something that is life-threatening, but it gives you the sense of it. And it's just such a great way to learn and develop yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've seen growing leaps and bounds in our professional life and our personal life, as you said. Absolutely. So those who are listening and or watching, If you like these stories, you like to learn more about how we learn about ourselves and how others learn about themselves, so you can take those lessons as well. That's what this podcast is all about. For now, we anticipate an episode to be released every other Monday, opposite the Mondays that our escape room blogs are released. And each of these episodes will include learning topics from escape room experiences, from people all over, enthusiasts, game designers, game masters, anyone who's had experience with an escape room. We'll dive into their learning.
Oh, and we've met so many people.
Yes.
And we hope to get as many of them as possible on, and you can hear it right from the people that are experiencing it every day. But thank you so much for joining us. And please subscribe so that you don't miss our future episodes.
Also, make sure to go to lifeisanescaperoom.com. We've got a lot of resources up there to include the blog, our book, and many more.
And we recommend for everyone that's interested in escape rooms, checking out the Morty app. Yeah. Just MORTY. And if you look up morty.app, you can find the escape rooms near you. And we love the app and and recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, I love the ratings on there too. They really help us plan out our escape rooms, because these are folks who are experienced with escape rooms. So when you see that red circle, it means they've had mostly positive, and you need to hit that room. So
absolutely.
And if you want to dive further into the escape room world, there is a Facebook group called Escape Room Enthusiasts. So that's where folks share their experiences, give recommendations for different rooms that they've done, and not just in-person rooms. Some folks also share, we've learned about some great escape room board games, as well as virtual experiences from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And we hope to see you in the next episode released in a couple of weeks.
Want to learn more about the Eanes escapeletes, buy the book, or read the blog? Visit lifeisanescaperoom.com.